Welcome to the Man to Man meeting. This call is about freedom to live life and relationship with passion, freedom to feel confident within yourself no matter what, and the freedom to make the most important promises to yourself. I actually want to start with this idea of ego and unattachment from outcome, because certainly if we are feeling pain around our relationship and the fact that she wants space and I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or if we're feeling pain that we're not close to her, we wonder where this is coming from and how do I handle this? I just spoke with a man today who's 3 kids, 32 years old. They're high school sweethearts. And she wanted to open the marriage about 9 months ago. And for the past 2 years, there's been incredible stress in both of their lives. And they've really both lost themselves. And her wanting to open the marriage is definitely something that he does not want. And at this point now, she's considering, quote unquote, taking the kids to the neighboring state so she can go live with her mother and her sister and her family unit while none of his family is there. And he certainly doesn't want his kids to be taken out of state. And so he's asking himself, where did this go off the track? And I certainly don't want to be away from my children. And is what she's asking reasonable? And do I need to protect myself? Everyone around me is telling me I should just file for divorce to protect myself and my kids so she doesn't take them out of state. A lot of legal considerations there. But as we circle through the painful legalities of the situation that often happens and the business type situation that divorce is, once we circle all the way back to the beginning of this work, whether you are having a phenomenal relationship with your woman, or you hope to reestablish a relationship with your woman, or like this man, that he's really wanting to get his own ducks in a row and make sure that he's protecting himself and he's not naive to what's actually happening. No matter where you are, this idea of ego and the self and masculine depth, what matters to me? Should I just be okay if she never wants to have sex with me again? What does that mean? And I want to begin with this passage from Eckhart Tolle, this quote. And I want to open it up here to this deeper discussion tonight of what ego means or attachment. What does it mean to you? Eckhart Tolle, fear seems to have many causes: fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being hurt, and so on. But ultimately, all fear is the ego's fear of death, of annihilation. We'd say the ego is our mind. The ego is wanting to protect us, right? Kill, procreate, don't die. Find shelter, find food, procreate, don't die. That's really the ego's motivation. And the ego has a fear of death, of annihilation. So we fear there is a tiger behind every bush. And if there is a tiger, we save ourselves. If there is no tiger, well, that's okay. It's just anxiety and fear. Well, now we live a lot longer. So are we going to be in fear of death and annihilation for 80 years? Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being hurt. The ego, death is always just around the corner. In this mind-identified state, fear of death affects every aspect of your life. Let's talk about this. Fear of death, ultimately behind insecurities, behind fear of being hurt, behind fear of failure. How does that run across you? How have you thought about this in your life as a man? Unmute yourself, come on in. What do you think about ego, death, and about our fears of failure, insecurity, and how that's associated with our mind just wanting to keep us safe? How do you look at fear?
I'm dealing with it now. I think that there's a lot of things to unpack when it comes to fear, because there's like simple fears, like for example, sometimes I do karaoke a lot, but sometimes I get that slight fear of doing karaoke in front of a bunch of random people just for a split second, right?
Yeah.
But I get up there anyways. And then there's the fear that I'm dealing with right now, which is sometimes crippling. I'm going through divorce and I have to do all this free paperwork and talk about issues like, did my wife ever cheat on me, or did she ever hit the kids, and all that type of stuff. And so the fear inside of me is, should I be a nice guy or should I tell it like it is? And that's like a crippling fear for me right now. It's like I got writer's block. So that's what my experience is with fear right now. And I do think that the ego is tied to that in a way. When I go back to the karaoke situation, the ego is tied to that. Part of that is that I have a fear of being seen as unperfect, right? I get up, I sing in front of people, and I can't sing. So a lot of people are now going to know that I can't sing a lick, man, and it's going to hurt. But once you get up there and people are supportive, they know you can't sing, but they know you're having fun. So it's all good. And then the with my wife, the crippling fear of should I be a nice guy here and not just tell it like it is. Part of me, like stupidly, is like, okay, and I'll get brownie points with her, even though I don't really think that I want that. But I mean, that's just like that little tinge, that little thought is there. Or I'll be seen as a nice guy to everybody else, in court or whatever, and I just need to tell it like it is, but I'm just having trouble doing that. So it's really cool that I'm going through it because I didn't even know it was an issue for me.
Yeah, I would imagine. So what, if I can ask, what is the truth in your mind, or what are you fighting with as far as what you want to put on this piece of paper?
I think I'm fighting with a few things. One, I'm fighting with some events that would make me look weak. And I'm like, okay, I write this down, and because we have our hearing on the 31st, so not all of this, but some of this is going to be out in the public domain. I mean, anyone can come to the hearing, right?
Mm.
So some of it's going to make me look weak. Now, on the face of it, do I really care about it? No, I don't, but I think there is some ego lingering there, pulling it back in. There's some part of me, some minor part of me that wants to pull it back and not tell everybody. And then there's a bigger part of me. And I think the bigger part of me is like, hey, let everybody know, because I want to be free of these things. I want to be free so that I have nothing to hide and I can just be me.
You want to say it out loud here, what it is?
Oh, what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I didn't think of this specific thing. There's many things.
Sure.
Well, okay, here's one. I'll tell one real quick. Very embarrassing. About, I think I've already said it before, but I think this is about 5 years ago. So I thought that my wife was cheating on me. So I started recording her conversations, and I started doing surveillance on her. There you go.
Gotcha. What did you learn about yourself through that?
Well, I learned a lot of stuff, and I'm going to tell everybody here that hasn't gone that route, do not do it. I drove myself insane. And once I got there and I got away from that, I was like, I'm never going to do that with anybody ever again. Because like for me, it was every single thought is, what's she doing now? And it drove me crazy. So she knows about, most of it. I mean, the recordings, all that type. So she found out about the recordings. So I had to own up to that. So, but yeah, that's the thing, man. I did that. I landed on a sword on that one.
Yeah, I hear you. Thanks for opening up, man. Like, it's not easy to just put things out there that we're embarrassed about, certainly. And I find that so interesting. Confirmation bias. I don't know if you found anything because you were looking for something, but to learn about yourself, to open the door to trying to find dirt where your whole like being gets consumed with trying to find dirt on someone else. And all of a sudden you feel like you're swimming in the dirt, regardless of what's actually happening.
Right. And I think that it was, in some ways it was wanted. I did find out some things that I wasn't aware of. But I think the mind tells you stories all the time. Every single day there's a story. For example, I have my 17-year-old nephew here. He came home early this morning, and I've been having problems sleeping. So he was making a lot of noise downstairs and whatnot. So here's the mind. My mind jumps. He's being an asshole. He's trying to wake me up. He's, whatever. Obviously, that's just a quick thought. My other thought is, no, he's not really being that. He's just being a teenager, that's just not thinking about things. That's really what it is. And it's just the stories that we tell ourselves. If we blurted out every single story that we told ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends. We would have been done with our wives, our mother-in-laws, our mothers, our dads. I mean, we'd just be in a little a little dark pit hole by ourselves, because no one would want to be around us. So, I mean, those stories that you tell yourself, you just got to be patient and really say to yourself, is this really true? Is this a thing? And most of the time, it is not.
Yeah, really well said. I was having some back and forth discussion on the Mentoring Men forum actually today about truth and being ourselves, telling her our truth, being honest. And I find it's like this word truth is so subjective,
Yeah.
so massively subjective that I never considered before. But yeah, making stories in our mind, changing the narrative intentionally to something that's of high regard, that's literally high regard or high mood, you might say, in your thoughts. How long have you had to practice? Have you always been like that, Keith? Maybe you have, where you switch it to positivity, or if you had to practice that?
I think naturally I have been like that, but I've turned it off at times because I kind of felt like I was too nice of a person sometimes. So for me to, I don't know, to be more manly or whatever you want to say, I turn it off on purpose,
Mm.
and go on the negative side of a story. But most of the time, naturally, I'm a very curious person. So I'm also a very patient person too. So I'm usually able to kind of figure out that, hey, maybe there's something else going on here. It doesn't mean that I know exactly what's going on in somebody's mind. It's just that I can come up with several different reasons why someone, stepped on your foot. Did they purposely do it? You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. Yeah, but how do you mean? I'm curious. I don't see having to switch to turning it off or having a negative thought process as like more masculine or gives you maybe more of a chance to stand up for yourself. Is that what you mean?
yeah. So I think that when I get these stories, for me, a lot of times the first thing that used to pop up, and sometimes it does now too, is the negative side of something. Somebody I was just talking about somebody stepping on my foot. The negative story would be, oh, they did that on purpose.
Right.
That's the negative side, right? So those pop up first, and I was saying that sometimes I turn it off, the rationality part of me, and then I react
Mm.
on purpose without being myself, and just allowing myself to be curious as to why something happened, or be patient and then allow other thoughts to fill that story, that void in the story, or give different options to that story.
Yeah. So do you mean like when you're tired or not
Oh
on your
yeah,
game, like that kind of thing? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I appreciate it, Keith. Good to see you, man. Thanks for getting us started. Yeah, absolutely. Julio, thanks for raising your hand. Come on in, please.
No, I just wanted to say, I can somewhat relate to what Keith was saying. There's like when we initially were having our issues, me and my wife, and we separated. Yeah, I had that impulse to like, I did drive by the house a couple of times thinking that she was seeing somebody else. And, I never really like surveilled her or anything like that. But the thought crossed my mind and it was just that impulse. And I can totally relate. Like, what is she doing? Those racing thoughts. She says she hates me. She doesn't love me anymore. That means she's seeing somebody else. And yeah, that just drives you crazy. So I can totally relate to it as far as that thought process goes. And yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me, if I can, Julio, by the way,
Mhm.
gentlemen that came in a little bit later, love to see you guys here. Harry's here, Quajo, Mohammed's here, Dan, you guys are fantastic. I jumped right from the opening topic of my wife wants to hang out, but just with the kids. What's that about? To questions I would ask myself if I'm in that position. And then just because I wanted to for fun, I dove right into what is ego and why do we have fear? And Eckhart Tolle's boiling this down to ultimately fear of death or fear of annihilation, being completely erased, like meaning nothing, having no trace left of you, no legacy whatsoever. So the ego or death is always around the corner. So I want to ask you, Julio, how would you relate? I don't want you to force this, so just be honest with me. How might you relate what I'm losing or fear of losing with my family or fear of losing with my relationship to death? Why would your ego maybe think that this is death?
I was lonely, like being alone, like at that point. I mean, even now, sometimes I'll get those thoughts where I'll start creating stories, but now I'm catching myself. But it's the thought of like being alone is fucking scary, man. I don't know what it is, but and I think just it wasn't even the fear of death, but I mean just being like, yeah, just being alone and just thinking that you're gonna die alone, that nobody's gonna love you, that you're a failure as a husband, as a father. Like those thoughts start crossing your mind, and it's that fear of just being alone and being stuck and drowning, especially in your own head. You know, you can't escape it. Um, and as far as like the ego, you know, it's like it's because it's just showing you that you create that story that you're a failure in life, and that takes a hit at your ego because as a man you're supposed to be strong and not weak. This you losing your family is, at least to me, was a sign of me being weak, not man enough, not masculine enough, just not enough in life in general. So that means that I'm worthless, and that just hits your ego really hard. If that makes sense, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. This, and to feel, and to add some icing on that cake, she's often saying things like, you're not good. I heard you're not man enough for me. Like I've heard, I've heard some of
Yeah,
these things as well. Yeah.
yeah. You're not man enough. You don't provide enough for me. You don't spoil me. Like, I mean, I can go on. I hate you. I mean, she says some mean things. Like she, you know, comparing me to other guys. Like, fuck, man. Of course, that you know that takes a fucking low blow. You know, and and yeah, it's a low blow to your ego. And then I think you start relating that to your life, and you start creating these stories about your future. Damn, I'm gonna die alone. I'm not gonna find a woman that I'm good enough for. I'm not good enough for women, you know, and you just starts a cycle, and that's where that fear comes, where you're just not enough, and of course that can lead to other issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And so a huge piece of this work is to separate those two ingredients that feel like they're just mashed together in a soup, to separate the what's happening in life with the man that we are, right? Our circumstances don't relate to our character necessarily. Our circumstances don't define our character necessarily. And that's so difficult when if we feel isolated, if we feel alone in this work. And that's such part of the secret sauce of community, of you guys being here all together. Yeah.
and and just, you know, just to say all that was, it's not true. You know, it's hard work to get out of it, but I know, you know, it's just understand that it's not true. It's not who I was. You know, it's I still have value, and I'm not gonna be alone. I'm a good person. You know, and you know, just rebuilding that. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Absolutely. Thanks, man. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Yeah. Has anyone felt the shift from, you know, I'm picturing back in my nice guy days, let's say, when my woman's upset with me, or she just even looks disappointed on her face. And it's this like tearing of my chest open as if I've failed the entire world. And it's that the fear that it feels like I'm, you know, headed for the guillotine or something, even though she didn't even really say anything necessarily, just a look on her face before doing this work. Can anyone relate to turning the corner away from that? Can you relate to, okay, now I see a woman who's mad at me and I see it for what it is, and I'm able to see it from the outside in, and I don't feel like my chest is being torn open. I care about her, but I no longer feel like means my imminent death. Can anyone remember the feeling in their body, one to the other? Yeah, Dan, please.
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, I definitely had to contend with that. I got move into the other room here.
Sure.
No, I definitely let my wife's opinion of me basically rule me for a long time. And she was a very volatile person. And so I was very reactionary to her moods, and made for a pretty miserable existence. But through all this work, I've been able to make that shift. And, you know, I don't have the relationship with her today, so I can't really gauge how that would apply to today. But I'll tell you, in the interactions I do have with her, I definitely present myself as a different person. I don't deflect. I don't make excuses. I listen to what she has to say, but I also recognize that it's her opinion, and it's also, I have the right to not agree with her opinion.
Yeah.
Took a long time for me to realize that.
Yeah.
And but where it is showing up, it really is my relationship with my daughters, and particularly my oldest one, who she's 16 years old, and she can be pretty up and down, and I don't react to her moods. I am in whatever mood I am in because I feel like being in that mood, and if her mood isn't jiving with mine, that's not really my problem. And I'll tell you, I feel a lot freer. I was just thinking the other day after I dropped my youngest one off at school the other day, and thinking about just how free I feel in my life. I can listen to whatever music I want on the radio. I can, really for the most part do what I want, and be myself, more importantly, because of that. The big question is, once another woman is involved, do I revert back to those bad behaviors that got me into the predicament that I was in with my relationship, or am I able to maintain this frame? So I'm cognizant of it, and there are times where I do catch myself, and I'm like, am I saying this for myself, or am I saying this for her? And so I'm aware of it, at least. And I think awareness in anything is at least half the battle. So at least I'm aware of it, and I'm catching these things when they do creep up, but they are far and few between.
Yeah, well said, Dan. Let me bounce something off you that when I had this realization, and what just popped in my head right this second, which was, I'm no longer interested in anyone judging me. I'm no longer concerned of a woman's judgment of me or anyone's judgment of me. Now that, that's an ideal that I work toward, but specifically not interested in trying to make her think better of me, worried about her judgment of me. How does that land for you? I'm no longer worried of anyone's judgment of me.
Yeah, and I would say that for me had been a pretty big goal through all this work, because I did allow people's judgment of me kind of rule my personality to some extent. I think I'm much better at it today. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I speak my mind and I'm honest with my feelings, but I'm also a little bit more cautious than I was before. And I think that's where I probably got in a little bit of trouble earlier in my life, is that I was probably a little too loud, a little too bombastic, a little bit too. Now I find myself not enjoying taking a step back and enjoying listening to other people talk and listen to their opinions and learning from that, than for me to be feeling like I need to be part of that discussion. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, I'm not allowing other people's judgments of me carry as much weight, but I'm also, I think, being a little bit more cautious about how I present myself to the world than I probably used to. Maybe that's maturity as well. I don't know.
I don't know if that's
maturity.
I don't know if that's the other side of the sword, or if it's just wisdom and maturity. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Good to see you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious, as time goes on with the new woman that you're dating, how that will flesh itself out, like these nice guy old habits. And if you, speaking with another man about that yesterday, actually, usually that crops up as this desire to lie about something, I have found, or to defend. Definitely those two are really high in the list. Like, wait a minute, don't think that about me, like that. That's how it feels for me. Like, wait, let me change your mind. That I got to catch myself, breathe, allow them to think I suck, allow them to think bad things, allow them to judge me. That's my practice. That takes a breath or two for me. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Good to see you. Larry, come on in. I'm not sure if we've met face to face. Your name looks familiar. Have we seen each other face to face before?
I'm not sure. I've been on one or two other calls here in the group. I don't think I've ever joined this one particularly.
Gotcha. Well, good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So how's this conversation running up against you around fear and ego? And if we're identified with this, how it affects every aspect of our life?
Yeah, it's a realization that I came to tail end of last year, so December timeframe, that I have basically spent my entire 23-year relationship to my ex now afraid of losing her, afraid of her leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And so every decision that I made in that 23 years was in an attempt to keep her from leaving. And as a result, I got exactly what I was afraid of, because I didn't allow her to feel. I didn't allow her to express her emotions to me. I didn't allow her to just be, and to be safe for her to express those emotions, because I couldn't even handle them in myself, because I was afraid of my own emotions. I grew up thinking that being angry was bad and evil, that being upset was bad. And so my whole life I always tried to suppress those emotions. And you know how well that goes when you
Right.
suppress emotions. They come out even worse later. And so as a result, I ended up gaining everything I hoped to not have. And
Self-fulfilling prophecy type situation.
absolutely, 100%. 100%. You know, I spent the last year in a suicidal depression, and, you know, just shame spiral, the whole 9 yards, and withdrew from her because I was afraid to let her know that I was weak in that way. Because if she saw me as that weak, she would want to leave. And end result is she was able to tell herself a story that I was interested in other people and other things more than her. And so she left. She went and found somebody else and has started building a new life. And I'm left here in the wreckage.
Well, I'm proud of you for being here with us, Larry. Where are you, would you say, in your personal path, your journey, your growth?
Further along than I thought I would be at this point. But I also hit a point yesterday where I realized I need to quit looking at the mile markers on the journey and just take the journey for what it is. And it's a bumpy journey, but just enjoy the bumpy journey, because I'm becoming better every day. But I kept looking at those mile markers. Yeah, I'm hitting new milestones. Yeah, I'm getting better. And then yesterday ended up having an absolutely horrific conversation with her about something that should have been easy, about something that should have been nothing. But it ended up being a 20-minute fight, because my fear crept up and I got defensive and critical, and turned what could have been a positive interaction into a really negative one, with her telling me, "You're exhausting. This is why I left you."
Yeah, that's painful.
Yeah.
What was kind of the trip for you? That she was judging you in some way or had an opinion of you or something?
The conversation was about scheduling therapy for our 13, almost 14-year-old. She lives an hour and a half away now. And he had expressed to me that he would prefer have therapy up here where I live, not where she lives, because in his words, he doesn't feel safe emotionally down there. He doesn't feel like he can be himself around her. So, you know, kind of the same journey I'm on. He's learning that about himself at a very early age, unfortunately, or fortunately. Maybe it's a good thing he's realizing that. But she was absolutely insistent on therapy for him being where she lives. She is the custodial parent, and she's like, "I want it down here." And I tried finding compromises. You know, we'd had the discussion 2 weeks ago, and then it came back up. And I tried finding compromises, because with it being an hour and a half away, it basically means I can't really be involved, period, because I end up having to take significant times off of work anytime he's got a therapy appointment, right? And so the feelings I was having during the call was that I was disregarded, that my opinion didn't matter, that I was being removed from responsibility in my kid's life in an area that I have always been 100% responsible. And so I was feeling discarded, and like I didn't matter anymore. And so all those feelings, you know, I came to that realization late yesterday that that's what was really going on with me. And yeah.
Well, it sounds like you came to the realization pretty quickly, historically.
Yeah. Normally I wouldn't have come to that realization, period. I would have just sat there pissed off for days in a victim mindset, thinking she's just being an unreasonable, excuse my language, an unreasonable bitch. You know, that's where my head would have been just 3 months ago, you know? So that's where I know I'm further along. But the fact that I was able to so easily slip into that victimhood during the call with her, and it upset me last night when I realized that's what I had done.
Sure, I hear you, man. And let me be in your corner for a minute, because speaking with her around your child, you're wanting to protect your child, that you've always been responsible for your child. Like, that is one of the most intense situations, like instinctually intense situations possible. Yeah. So I hope you have some compassion for yourself. Obviously, you would have liked to have handled it differently. Welcome to the club. I have plenty of those, those instances. But I hope you have some compassion for yourself. And if I may, how does that relate to like counting the mile markers? And I'm assuming you mean mile markers for your own self, like what you actually can control. Okay, so
I thought I had gotten past those reactions. I thought I had found all of the triggers and had gotten to a place where I could manage the triggers, and he found one.
Yeah.
She hit right square in the middle of one really hard yesterday, you know, and it's not that she was trying to.
Right.
You know, I sat there getting off the call that she was trying to push my buttons. And I'm like, she wasn't trying to push my buttons. She cares about the kid too. And she's just trying to do what she thinks is best for him. And I wish I had that in my head in the middle of the call, because it would have gone significantly differently. I would have taken a breath and been like, hey, give me a sec. Let me calm down for a second. I'm getting a little out of sorts, and let's talk again. But instead, I lost that high regard for her and thought she was trying to push my button. She's trying to kick me out of care for my child,
right? And
sent us down a rabbit hole of horrible.
Yeah. I'm going to tell a quick story. For me, my old go-to is anger. Like, my family always wore their feelings on their sleeve kind of thing, which usually they'll just say some bullshit off the cuff, right? So mine was anger, where it's like this energy just rushes up the back of my head and over my scalp and kind of comes over my face. And I scrunch my face and I look at the person like, I think I'm being confused. I'm like, what? I'm confused, but it looks like I'm about to rip their throat out, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then the next thing I would do is usually like take a step forward or lean in or push their. So I don't want to do that anymore. And I've been doing this for a long time. That's back when I was basically in my teens and 20s.
Right.
So like 5 years ago, I've done this work for a long time. 5 years ago, I sit down with the principal of my kid's school and the head psychologist for the district. And I'd met them many, many, many times. I won't go into my kiddos' stuff. But the psychologist and the principal are chatting, and I'm there kind of waiting at the little table, you know. I think I had this little chair as well. I'm in the fucking emasculation chair, you know.
Right.
And the principal looks across the table and she goes, "Does your son always treat women like this?"
Oh, no.
Yeah, right. And this is supposed to be a progressive school. And she just asked me this like woke, I guess, but horrendously sexist question that has like nothing to do with anything.
Right.
And basically, I just kind of looked down at the table, and that feeling of I'm going to kill this person, you know, came like rushed over me. And so at this point, here's the point of my story. At this point, I'd practiced that feeling enough. I'd been aware of those emotions, usually after the fact, after I put my foot in my mouth, enough where I realized it was happening. So it's not a conscious thought. It's not like I'm being triggered now. Let me put them in high regard. It's basically, it was just like I trained myself to not do anything when that feeling came on. So I looked down at the table, and all I thought was breathe, you know, like don't do anything, breathe, don't do anything. Like that's not even a conscious thought. It was just my practice.
Right.
Because man, I wanted to tear in, and I knew it wasn't going to help anything. Enough fucking up to breathe, look down, breathe, look down, breathe, look down. And I know they were watching me for like a good at least 30 seconds, probably a full minute. And I'm sure I was changing colors, you know. But I'm looking down. Just to happen? Yeah, right. So I don't know. I didn't even look up for like a full minute, whatever it was, until I was able to think like, like bring my cognition back online. And I looked up and I said, "I'm confused by your question. Could you ask me that in a different way?" That's what I said. That's what I said. But I went through like Dante's Inferno for 60 seconds to get there.
Right.
But please have some compassion for yourself. And the key to me is recognizing what that feeling is, or that tearing feeling, or that overwhelmed, like your face gets hot. Yeah. If we can that's what we have to be aware of and recognize.
Right.
Breathe ourselves through it and don't say anything until we actually can get. So now I can feel maybe pressure in my head, or I can feel like, oh, this is making me angry without all that other rigmarole that I just described. So it gets better and better, but please have some compassion for yourself. And hey, man, high five yourself for the mile markers that you can control.
Yeah.
But that never means that the journey's done, right? I still do my work. I still do my morning kingly plan. I still read, right? I still journal. I still work out. I still use the 24/7. So all these things that I teach, I still practice. I'm just a lot better at them than I was 15 years ago, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Larry, thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
So Josh, I saw you had your hand up earlier.
With my wife's reactions and stuff, and like controlling myself, whether or not what she thinks is true or how she feels. A certain scenario came up. I was setting up my son's baby camera, and I had left it plugged in my old bedroom, and she thought I was trying to spy on her.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, I left it in there. I meant to hang it up, but something came up and I just left it there and forgot it was plugged in. So she was cleaning one day and she was like, "Are you spying on me?" I was like, first of all, why would I?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you can think whatever you want, but that's not what I was doing. So.
Yeah, I hear you, right? And it's tough when we're in that spot. So my go-to now is to make a joke first. I call it sexy funny. And it usually doesn't go over very well, but that's not the point. The point is to practice a kind of a, like, if I put you on the spot right now, and Josh, if I were you, and I'm putting you on the spot, and I said, yeah, if I were you, and I said, yes, I am spying on you, because what would be a sexy funny joke you might say there?
I don't know. I wanted to see what color underwear you're gonna wear every day.
There you go. Yeah, you got it, man. Nice. Absolutely. Even though maybe that doesn't make any sense. Maybe there's, maybe it doesn't make any sense.
It was hanging on the floor. Like, it wasn't even set up to like look at the room. It was on the floor under the bed. Like,
yeah. And here's the thing. It doesn't need to make any sense. Like, you're not trying to make sense to your woman. You're just showing her, I'm going to fucking play with this. I'm going to play with you. I'm going to play with this. Yeah. What do you think I was doing it for? Of course. I wanted to see what color panties you were wearing, even though it doesn't make any sense. And then just look at her like, yeah, that's why. Yeah.
I don't think he believes it.
Yeah, right. Good stuff. Yeah. Thanks for jumping in, man. Josh, you're on a journey too. I appreciate you.